I'm Jonathan.
I'm Ashley, and we are Tiny Shiny Home.
Our family is building an off-grid desert homestead, and today we're going to take you through the process of installing a Wi-Fi mesh that not only covers our 7 acres, but also puts that fast internet inside multiple buildings that are metal and even earthbag.
16-inch walls.
Yeah. Before we get started, I just want you to know that I'm not an IT person. I don't have any background in networking. We're not sponsored by any of the companies we're going to talk about. We just picked this equipment based on our needs, and we hope you find it helpful.
Yes, I am also not an IT person. However, let's just talk about what is not working with our current setup.
Because there's a few things.
So many things.
It's not great.
When we moved to our property, we were coming off of 5 years of traveling full-time in our airstream. We spent most of our time camping off-grid and boondocking, so we had a cell-boosted internet setup that worked so well we just kept it.
You can read through the full details of that setup at tinyshinyhome.com/internet. But then we built our first building, and that's where the problems started. Now we had this solar shed office where we did most of our work, and the airstream where the kids did their schoolwork. We hacked together a solution using the Wi-Fi out antenna of the router in the shed to get internet over to the router in the airstream, but that meant we had 2 Wi-Fi networks, and it just wasn't super reliable. It was one of those things where it worked enough of the time that we didn't fix it, but it was just kind of getting on everyone's nerves.
His frustration was building.
I think everyone's frustration was building.
I could care less.
You got mad all the time too.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. When you tried to text me and the text wouldn't go through.
Well, I think you just weren't getting the text, and you were just saying that you weren't getting the text, but you did get the text.
No, we weren't frustrated at all. So I knew it was time to do something about this, but we really didn't take it seriously until we saw some guy out marking stuff on our roads, and we went to talk to him. He said that there was a grant, and they were running fiber internet.
If you're not familiar with our area, there's just like open property out here.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people, and so we were really confused at why they would be running fast internet out here.
Yeah, but we're not complaining.
No. But
they did eventually run the fiber, and since we're making videos full time now, it seemed kind of like a no-brainer to take advantage of those fast speeds. So it was up to me to figure out how to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
These were the goals that I had. You probably didn't care.
Nope.
But these were my goals. Number 1, we needed to have the same internet speeds outside and inside the buildings. Our solar shed office, which has 16-inch earthbag walls, the airstream, which is aluminum, and the steel goat barn container that we renovated for our daughter. Number 2, we also work outside a lot. I wanted our Wi-Fi to be a single network that we stayed connected to as we walked around the property. Like I mentioned, I'm not an IT person, and I knew that I would be the one setting up and managing this system.
I volunteered to set it up, but for some reason he said I couldn't.
So simplicity, both in physical and software setup, would be important for my sanity. We're still building our big hyper Adobe roundhouse, and let's be honest, we live on a homestead. We're always going to be building or working on a new project, so it was important that this system was modular and expandable for different use cases. Besides being expandable, I wanted to be buying into like a good ecosystem where I could plug stuff in and I would know that they would work with each other, and I wouldn't spend hours downloading software patches and reading forums and trying to figure out what the heck was going on.
Okay.
I needed it to work. Part of that was software too. With all the off-grid systems we have, I'm finding it increasingly important to use companies that take their software seriously. You don't want critical bugs when you're on a homestead. And by bugs, I mean bugs in the software, not bugs that come out of the ground.
I have enough of those.
We do. And finally, we just needed hardware that would take advantage of fiber internet speeds. Our current setup would only do like 120 megabits a second. We could get plans from the fiber company for like up to a gigabit a second.
Gigabits.
They're fast. They're real fast.
Megabits. Microbits.
Mini bits.
Compost bits.
So what do we do when we need to figure something out?
Research.
We researched. Like any good homesteader, we did our research. First up is what I like to call active research. This is when you kind of know what you want, but you don't know how to make it happen. Typing search queries into search engines and websites, watching videos, reading articles, taking notes. During this initial phase, one company kept coming up over and over again that would be a good fit for someone like me without a lot of networking experience, and that was Ubiquiti, specifically their UniFi line. So I started what I like to call passive research. Do you do this?
I don't.
Yeah, so basically it just means you join Facebook groups or subreddits.
I definitely don't do that.
Yeah, that are about the thing you want to learn about. And then as you're just scrolling through your feed mindlessly, you start seeing all this information about the thing you want to learn about. So just by reading other people's problems and solutions and all the comments and advice on each thread, I was able to understand so much more about what would work and what wouldn't. If you're researching a topic that you're not familiar with, sometimes you don't even know what to search for. So
I always know what to search for.
do you? Yeah. But if you don't, passive research is a great way to start. So long story short, we did pick UniFi for our networking setup.
Not sponsored.
But here's why we think it was the best choice for us. Number one, the general consensus seemed to be that UniFi had a pretty solid prosumer line.
Prosumer is a real word.
Yes, it is. That I could set up, me, a non-networking person.
Not IT guy.
Yeah. Number two, they actively developed their software. They even had open source repositories.
That's my favorite thing is open source repositories.
So anyway, that told me that they took their software seriously. Number three, they had good user interfaces.
Love a good user interface.
Listen, guys, I'm a designer, right? That's what I used to do. I used to design websites and apps and stuff. And so if I get into a thing and I'm trying to use it and I can't and it drives me crazy, it just stresses me out. They were all in on PoE and this really intrigued me.
You down with PoE?
Yeah, you know me. PoE, or power over Ethernet, is just an Ethernet cable that passes data but also power at the same time.
I love it when a cable does two things at once.
Yeah, and this was important because we're off-grid, we're putting antennas outside our buildings in hard-to-reach places. Running a single cable to those really sounded like a good idea. Made a lot of sense to me. Number five, once you buy that hardware, you get the software included and you don't have to pay monthly for the rest of your life to some random company just to use your network. Number six, we're always looking for companies that are DIY friendly.
I love a good DIY.
I mean, that's kind of what we do out here.
Mm-hmm.
So the nice thing about UniFi's lineup is that it is so deep and so modular that you can literally piece it together however you want for your exact situation.
It's so deep.
Number seven, they also had a solid ecosystem in place. We have some big plans for the house. So this was a good starter system to get us in there and get us to know how it's working. And number eight, if I did want to get way more nerdy and complicated,
Which you do.
I can totally do that with the software. I can set up VLANs or even guest networks when we have people come over to our workshops.
What's a VLAN? VLAN.
VLAN,
Oh, VLAN.
VLAN.
Now that I have done all the research and I have settled on UniFi, it's time to start our plan.
So this was the hardest part to understand, jumping into a big ecosystem like this, because all the other internet-y things that we had done before in our lives, there's like one box, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a router, and that router gets the internet and it makes a Wi-Fi signal and you use it. While UniFi does sell some all-in-one boxes, the power of that ecosystem is really that each part can be built separately or combined together or joined however you want. So let's talk about the basic components of a UniFi system.
Number one, you need a gateway.
This can be your own computer, but the simplest solution is just to get one of theirs. The gateway is sort of the heart and soul of the whole system. It comes with the software that lets everything talk to each other, it lets you access online from anywhere in the world, and it provides security. It's kind of how the whole ecosystem works.
Number two, you need some kind of switching.
What this means is that there are Ethernet ports you connect different antennas or devices to. While you can get gateways with switching built in, one main reason they're often separate is the PoE aspect. If you need to power a bunch of things on different ports, it makes more sense to have a dedicated device.
Number three, everybody needs an access point.
Or in my case, multiple access points. These are Wi-Fi antennas that let your devices connect to your Wi-Fi network.
Number four, we also needed special access points for meshing.
Let's talk about meshing real fast. For those situations where you want to extend your network but don't have a way to run physical wire, Wi-Fi meshing is the answer. The way this works is that the access point has hardware and software that lets it latch onto a Wi-Fi signal from another antenna, send it to a switch, and then distribute it back out through the other access points. and it can also beam that Wi-Fi signal back out and make the radius of the first meshing antenna even larger. So what this should look like in real world usage, I'm inside this solar shed building. I have my access point here, which is this little tall guy with the blue light on the top. Right now, that has the strongest signal. That's what my phone is connected to. But as I go outside, now I got 16-inch walls between me and that access point. That signal is going to go way down. But because we have an access point up on the airstream cover, we have an access point over here on the solar shed roof, it's going to look at those and it's going to say, okay, well, that one's stronger. That's the one that I'm going to connect to. And if I were to go inside the airstream where we have that other access point, it would connect to that one because that one is stronger.
That's exactly what we wanted to happen. So that's the plan. Let's see how we did it.
We started with our gateway, and we went with the Cloud Gateway Ultra. It's considered a starter device, but it was powerful enough to run 1 gigabit speeds, manage 30 UniFi devices, and 300 clients. Plus, it sat nicely on the desk in the shed and didn't require me to go down the route of a whole rack install. While I love a good rack, that's the plan for the house. We're trying to keep it simple for now. You plug an Ethernet cable from your modem or ONT right into this device and then download the UniFi app on your phone. Once I did that, the app was able to discover the UCG Ultra, got my UniFi account set up, the gateway provision, and my Wi-Fi network created.
This gateway did not have an access point or PoE.
No apropos. Nope. And I will pause here to say, again, you can buy all-in-one units with all these things together, but you make trade-offs in terms of price and speed and power and all those things. And so in our case, it made more sense to separate them, just so you know. So in order to distribute the internet to the inside of the shed and to the outside of the shed to everything else, we needed access points, but also a way to power them via PoE. So we started with the flex switch at 5 ports, about 46 watts of total power. Now, the tricky part, bear with me here, is that this particular switch is meant to be powered by another switch.
Second switch.
A second switch. So it doesn't actually have like a power plug on it. It only has an Ethernet port that accepts power. So you have to get a special adapter. It's called a PoE adapter, and it's got a spot for 2 Ethernet cables, one in, one out, and then just an AC plug on the other end, and that's how you power.
Sounds real simple, babe.
With the switch powered, we could connect our APs. We went with the U6 mesh, mainly so we could set it on the desk and not have to install one of the discs on the ceiling or the wall. This connected to the switch with a single Ethernet patch cable. We needed the most powerful outdoor mesh antenna, so we went with the AC Mesh Pro. It was weatherproof, had versatile mounting options, and gigabit speeds. And it also said 2,000 square feet of coverage. We'll see how that actually worked out.
Isn't 7 acres bigger than 2,000 square feet?
A lot, yes.
Okay.
So out of the flex switch, we ran a really long shielded outdoor cable out our wire chase under the eaves and to the east side of the solar shed roof. We also put in an Ethernet surge protector with a drain wire down to our grounding rod.
Why do we need a drain?
Well, you know, we've had some lightning issues in the past, and while this won't stop a direct strike, any static buildup in the air should help with that a little bit.
So it's not like a drain, it's a grounding wire.
Yes.
Why don't we just call it grounding wire?
I don't make up the terminology.
Oh my gosh.
With both APs connected to the switch, I went back to the app and began to adopt the new hardware. This should be a painless process. You just tap the button, give it a few minutes while it updates and sets stuff up, and then you've got a Wi-Fi network to connect to. When this works, it's like magic, and it's one of the main reasons I went with the UniFi ecosystem. But it wasn't always the case. We'll get to that in a minute.
At this point, we are fully set up inside the solar shed and a good distance outside the solar shed.
Yep.
But we still need to get internet to the goat barn and the airstream.
First up was the airstream. It was under this awesome metal truss cover, which I knew would allow me to get the second AC Mesh Pro up as high as possible and pointed back towards the first AC Mesh Pro over at the solar shed. The most difficult part of this install was definitely just running the wire. Trying to get it into the airstream without cutting a brand new hole and then like up over the eaves and like protected from the weather. It was kind of a pain.
Should we also mention that you were doing this while 3 of us were out of town?
Yes, this was my side project while you were gone.
Alone.
Yeah, but we did install one of those Ethernet surge protectors here as well, which connects to a ground rod that is attached to that system up there. So we figured that out. We pulled the single outdoor Ethernet cable up into the networking area inside the trailer. That wire connected to another flex switch that we mounted to the wall, also powered by a PoE adapter. And then we used a U6 Plus Wi-Fi access point mounted to the wall to provide wireless signal inside the trailer. Once we ran all the wires, I powered the switch on, waited a few minutes for the new devices to show up inside the UniFi app. We adopted them, and then what that meant was that the AC Mesh Pro on the airstream cover was grabbing the signal from the AC Mesh Pro on the solar shed, pulling it in through the wire into the switch, and then distributing it back out through that access point inside the airstream.
Everybody got that?
What that basically meant was that when you're inside the airstream, you're still connected to the main network and you're still getting fast speeds because all those wires are connected to each other. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Then it was time to replicate the same setup inside our goat barn container. Not only did we have a nice new 3000 watt Victron system we wanted to get connected to the internet to monitor, but we were hoping that this would extend the Wi-Fi signal all the way down to our front gate so we could level up our new Ghost Controls gate opener with their multi-connect module. I mounted the third AC Mesh Pro to the goat barn where we already had drilled a hole in the container and ran the last outdoor Ethernet cable to the antenna. We also installed the Ethernet surge for this one, but it was different, and the reason for that was because the whole container was metal and it was grounded to our power system. You can take a screw directly into it, there's a metal plate in the middle of it, and that will ground it directly to the container. Inside, we just did the same thing we did in the airstream. We had the flex switch, another U6 Plus, and we turned it on and we adopted them, and magically now we had super fast Wi-Fi inside the goat barn. Not only was it fast inside the container, but it did extend that Wi-Fi network all the way down to the front gate.
That is perfect.
Okay, it wasn't all perfect. We definitely had some problems. Let's talk about it. The first big problem was that I actually could not adopt the AC Mesh Pros during the first round of setups.
Yeah, you called me. You were pretty bummed.
Yeah, I went to bed that night and I was worried because, I had internet inside the shed, but that outside access point wasn't working, which is kind of how everything else was going to work. And if I couldn't get the UniFi system to see it, I didn't know what I was going to do. Turns out apparently I had bought a brand new antenna. This particular one was so new that the software inside the gateway just hadn't been updated yet to be able to see it and talk to it.
And evidently, they update it every night.
Yeah, so it was set to update every night. So I woke up the next morning and I tried it and it magically worked. So the magic was back. My second big problem was that even though I got everything set up, the speeds inside the airstream were not fast enough. They were limited to 100 megabits a second. And when I went into the control panel, everything else said gigabit, and this one said FE. And I was like, what's FE? It stands for Fast Ethernet, which apparently is not fast enough and not gigabit.
Fast Ethernet sounds fast enough to me.
Anyway, there's a lot of people in the airstream, a lot of devices. I didn't want it to be artificially limited, but I had no idea what was going on because it was all hooked up right. Turns out sometimes you get a bad wire, or sometimes you damage it when you're pulling it through holes in the airstream. We still don't know whose fault it was. That doesn't matter. I replaced it with a new wire and it was good. One final setup issue was that I did have to go into the software and tell some of our access points not to mesh. We want the ones outside the buildings to mesh to each other, but if you have the ones inside the buildings trying to mesh to the outside of the buildings, you start creating these loops and everything starts going haywire. Other than that, I just really didn't like installing the surge protectors. The way they mounted was super fiddly. I had to install them in very weird places and situations. Running a ground wire down and digging up my ground rods was a pain.
Does everybody have to install a surge protector?
No, if you're doing everything inside the building, it's not a problem. It's only when you have long runs outside where you want to help protect that.
Now everybody's asking, how far did your mesh reach?
That was my biggest question going into this. I was so worried. It said 2,000 square feet for the AC Mesh Pro. That's not that big of a circle or a square. And our buildings are pretty far apart. And so I was worried it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, but did it work?
Thankfully, it did work. So let's talk about the specifics. From the main antenna on the solar shed to the airstream cover is about 100 feet. However, they are kind of pointed away from each other and part of the roof is in the way, but I'd still say we get about 90% of the throughput over there. The goat barn antenna, though further away at 215 feet, fares much better because the solar shed antenna is pointed right towards it and there aren't any obstacles. Funny enough, the goat barn project was very last minute at the beginning of this year, and when I started planning this network mesh, it wasn't even part of the plan, but it turned out being in such a good place because, like we said, it was centrally located. So by the time it was all said and done, we had Wi-Fi down on our front gate, all the way back up the airstream, over 500 feet from each other. Now, I will say that most people install mesh antennas in more densely populated areas, and so we had a lot going in our favor. Our trees are very low here, no line of sight issues. There's not a lot of other Wi-Fi networks out here, not a lot of competition, so that definitely helped us in being able to mesh over such a large area. Speaking of, let's go walk around the 7 acres and let's see how far the Wi-Fi network reaches. Okay, let's do some speed tests. We're right here in the middle. We're close to all of the outside antennas, so it's gonna be pretty fast, right? 270 megabits a second, which is about what we get. We're on the 300 megabit plan, so that's good. Now let's start going to like the corners of the property and see how it works. So we're a little blocked in the top corner of the property, mainly because of how that antenna is facing back that way. So a little ways down, we do still have Wi-Fi connection to the solar shed. So we've got 100 megabits a second. So we're about a third of the speed just because we're so far away and we're not pointed directly at it. So we're over here at our back gate. I'm getting about 40 megabits a second, which is obviously a little bit slower. Still plenty fast to, put a gate opener over here and connect it. We used to have 6 acres, but this is where we added our 7th acre so that we could do the goat barn project, which is over there. And that is where our last antenna is. So let's see how far it reaches. We're getting 230 megabits a second, which is pretty fast. So now we're back kind of in line of sight of the solar shed. So yeah, I'm getting about 30 megabits and I'm probably 300 or 400 feet at this point away from that one antenna. Or it could be connecting to that one too, it's a little closer. So by the time I got over here, it just finally switched over to that antenna. And so now we're getting like 100 megabits a second, which is good because if we ever wanted to add like a remote monitoring system for our electric fence, that means we have Wi-Fi down here. Of course, the most important test, will it connect to the Ghost Control's gate opener? 40 megabits, no problem. So northeast corner, we're barely connected. We're getting about 10 megabits a second. So we're about midway on the north line of the property, getting about 15 megabits, which I thought would be better because we're kind of line of sight, but there's a bunch of trees that are kind of in the way. So one thing we mentioned earlier, we spent a lot of time working outside. This is our Hyper Adobe Roundhouse project that we're in the middle of. Going to be spending a lot more time out here in the next couple of years, and so I want us to be able to stay on Wi-Fi. So let's check the signal. 150 megabits, 180, 100, 200, 215, 220. I think we'll be okay. Also, I have to say that I did look at the antenna patterns on UniFi site. I could not make any sense of them. And so this drawing that we have of our property is literally just where we walk around and how fast the internet was and if we were still connected to the network. Cool?
Very scientific.
Very non-scientific. So we've been running this setup for over a month now. What do you think?
It works great.
Yeah, it does. I was really hoping that from the kids I'd get it like, Dad, this is so stable and fast and reliable and we can do all the things we want to on our devices. Thank you so much for setting this up.
Did you get that, babe?
Nope.
Okay.
They're like, cool, it works like it should have worked from the beginning.
Why didn't you
Great
do
job,
this earlier, Dad?
Really though, I mean, those are the best kinds of installs on a homestead, right? When you set up a system that just kind of hums away in the background, it does its thing, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, it actually works.
That's the goal. Less mental overhead. Okay, bear with me. I want to talk about a few of the fun, nerdy things I've found since using the system that you probably don't care about.
I do love it when you get nerdy, babe.
Okay, well maybe you will like it. Number one, the control panel and dashboard really are great. They give you so much information and present it in a really clear and easy to understand way. The topology map is a great way to see how things are connecting to your network, especially if you're doing a lot of meshing like I am. Number three, everything is configurable, even the icons and the names of the devices, so you can easily see at a glance who's connected and where in a way that makes sense to you. And that's just scratching the surface. There's the ability to create multiple networks and firewalls, turn on various security and filtering, add backup failover internet sources, view details of traffic to various sites and which devices access them, and so much more. Sometimes I get a little overwhelmed looking at it.
That was a lot of nerd.
In a good way.
I like your nerd.
Oh, thanks, babe. I like your nerd too.
I'm not a nerd.
Oh my goodness, friends. I don't think we could have nerded any harder for this one.
You got real nerdy.
I did. Yep.
Yeah. But if you guys are confused or you have a question, make sure you leave a comment and we'll do our best to answer it.
Now, if you're looking to do something similar on your own property and you want to say thanks for this video, we have created a PDF guide of our setup with wiring diagrams and a shopping list to get you started. You can get that at tinyshinyhome.com/Wi-Fi mesh.
Yes. And if you like this video, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started here on our homestead.
We got so much stuff planned, some nerdy, some not. But anyway, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
We'll see you soon. Number 4. I'll go number 4. Land.
Land.
Oh.
Oh, land.
But we still needed to get it to the other buildings.
That was pretty good. That access point inside the airstream.
Everybody got that? You got that? Because I'm so confused.